What's going on, everybody, and welcome to bootcamp day number 12. Today we're going to be going over how to do your weekly SPY QQQ technical analysis. I'm going to be showing you exactly what I like to look for when doing analysis on SPY and QQQ. But real quick, before we hop into it, as always, make sure you guys are doing your daily check-in. Comment down below letting me know that you guys are still rocking with me until the very end of this boot camp. And while you're at it, also make sure to smash that like button as well as clicking that subscribe and that bell icon so you are notified every single time I upload a brand new video. But without further ado, let's hop into it. And real quick, if you aren't following me on Instagram, I highly suggest you do. I also post a lot of content on over there, as well as a lot of content on my stories. So make sure you guys are following me on Instagram at Carhorns. It's the only verified account on there. That link will be down in the description. Anyway, so hopping into how I go about my SPY and QQQ technical analysis. So before I even start on the analysis, what I like to do is look at the economic calendar. So if you head on over to Google and just type in economic calendar, you want to find marketwatch.com. This is going to show you all the important economic news that we need to pay attention to next week. Some news is going to be more important than other news, like the US leading economic indicators on Thursday at 10 o'clock. If you're in an open position, definitely want to pay attention to that. FOMC at 2 p.m. Very, very important. So this is the very first thing I do. I hop on here and I look and see, is there any news that I need to be aware of heading into next week? So once I go through there, then I start on the charts with SPY and QQQ. Now, what I have on this screen is just a 21 EMA and the TTM squeeze. I like to keep it very simple when I'm doing my analysis. So we can start by looking at, let's start with QQQ. So I'll start on QQQ, and then I personally start on the higher time frames like the monthly or the weekly. So if we're looking at the monthly time frame on QQQ, we can see that we are potentially forming a monthly cup and handle. That definitely is a possibility. But as far as levels, not really seeing any that I'm too interested in on the monthly time frame. Sometimes you will find levels on the monthly, sometimes you won't. But then we can start looking at the weekly. Now, when I was doing my analysis a couple weeks ago, or actually a few weeks ago, I did bring up that this weekly inverse hammer right here had the most selling volume on the weekly since way over here when price was down at that weekly 21 EMA. So that definitely sparked my interest at a possible pullback in the market. And as you see, what has happened these last 2 weeks, we have started to pull to the downside. So again, looking at the weekly time frame, looking at the overall price action and the volume, we could conclude that, okay, we might actually start getting a pullback. So as far as any weekly levels I'm interested in right now, honestly, not too much. The only thing that I'm actually really interested on the weekly time frame is actually a possible retest of this weekly 21 EMA. You can see we haven't tested this in a really long time since March. So it's been about 5 months since we have tested that level. So looking at the weekly time frame and the importance of that weekly 21 EMA, well, because we haven't tested it in a while, ideally would like to see a pullback down into that area. So currently that's around 350. That would take us around $16 to the downside. So it's definitely possible that we could pull back down to that area. Again, that's why it's important that we're doing multiple time frame analysis. But as far as just weekly levels in general, not necessarily seeing anything that I'm super interested in besides that one area. And then after that, I go down to the daily. On the daily time frame, we start looking for any other levels as well. Again, I really like to use Fibonacci retracement. We did have a previous resistance area right here on QQQ, and you can see that price was able to break above it. So because price was able to break above it, that then should act as a support area. And as you can see, price tried to hold it as support, but then eventually broke below it. So since price broke below it already, that's no longer an area that I'm interested in. Now, for me, what I would start doing is start taking Fibonacci retracements. We have this pivot low to pivot high. So we have 351.88, which is close to that weekly 21 EMA, which could be a key area. We also had this pivot low to pivot high right here, which you can see price got very close to on Friday at 363.38. So if price were to break below there, I would start watching these areas down here. Also, if price is trading near any interval of 5, I like to mark that as well. So 365, 360, 370, 375, etc., because those tend to be psychological areas of support and resistance. Now, as far as previous resistance turns support, you can see we had this resistance point right here at 357.75. Price broke above it, made a support right here, and it continued to push. So I would actually be very interested in a bounce down towards that 358.77 all the way down to 357.5. Now, depending if this were to be the bottom, we could start taking some Fibonacci retracements and look for any rejects next week. So we could take that pivot high to pivot low. We could take this pivot high to pivot low. It just really depends. Is that the bottom? If that isn't the bottom and the market continues to pull, then we're going to start looking for bounces down at our bounce area. Once I'm done going through all that, that's where I stop when I'm doing my weekly SPY and QQQ technical analysis. I stop on the daily. So now that QQQ is done, I also like to head on over to NQ to see if there's any confluence. So you can see on NQ that I do have a bounce area way down here. I pretty much have it marked out. NQ is getting very close to a psychological support of 15,000. So again, psychological areas, 15,000, 14,000, 13,000, etc. I will mark on NQ. We've talked about this previously, how the futures trade 23 hours a day from 6 p.m. all the way to 5 p.m. SPY and QQQ only trade 9:30 to 4. And because of that, the price action can be slightly different on the futures than SPY and QQQ. Sometimes the futures will validate a setup. Sometimes SPY and QQQ will validate a setup. That's why I like to do cross analysis between the two, because if you're only doing analysis on one, you could miss the entire setup. So because we had that 15,000 plus that 61.8% retracement, I would be watching that very closely for a possible area to bounce price next week. If price breaks below there, I have nothing until 14,694.75, which was that previous resistance turn support. And remember, QQQ actually hit the support area while NQ has not tested it yet. So I would be watching that very closely. And you can see I already have a supply zone marked out up here. And this Fibonacci retracement can get deleted because that's not valid. But again, if this were to be the bottom, pivot high, pivot low, look for rejects at the fib. So once I'm done with QQQ and NQ, I will then head on over to SPY. Again, we want to go through multiple different time frames. So looking at SPY, if it were to continue to the upside, this is the one area that we want to pay attention to, 462.07. That was that previous lower high, which should act as resistance. And ES actually hit the level, and you guys are going to see that here soon. But that was the only area I was interested in to the upside as far as resistance. Now, again, on the weekly time frame, an area I would like to see is going to be that 430.93, that weekly 21 EMA. Haven't tested it since April, so it's been about 4 months since we tested that level. Now, as far as the weekly time frame, we can see that there is a weekly Fibonacci retracement that we could use. That would take us all the way down towards 420, and we're all the way up at 445. So maybe in the future, as price starts to pull, we can start watching that area. Once I'm done on the weekly, I'll then go to the daily time frame. You can see that this was a huge resistance area on SPY right there. So that 443.9 all the way up to 444 was the key area. Now, price is trading in a daily gap. It hasn't filled it yet. It got about like 30 cents short. So I would watch 443 as well for a potential bounce next week once price fills the gap. Now, at the same time, we have pivot low, pivot high that we could use right there. And then the next pivot low, pivot high we have is all the way over here. So if I'm going to be looking for any bounce on SPY after that 443, it's going to be down at 442 because that is where that 61.8% retracement is. Now, if SPY were to break below 442, we really don't have any support as far as fibs until 434.66 and then 428.8. So those would be my bounce areas if the market were to continue to pull. Now, as far as rejects next week, depending on if this is the bottom, maybe we come down and we bounce right here, we can start taking pivot high, pivot low, and start looking for a reject on the way up. Now, once I'm done with SPY, I then take a look at ES, and because sometimes ES is going to have a level that you can't see on SPY. So if we're looking at the weekly time frame on ES, we can see that that hit that previous lower high at 46.31 and it started pulling back. I'd be interested in a weekly bounce at that weekly 21 EMA, but also at the same time, price is inside a weekly demand on ES. So that would be an area I would be interested in. We're just going to have to wait and see how the market reacts next week. Remember, when I do supply and demand, it is only on the future. So we do have weekly demand right there. Once I'm done looking at the weekly, and then we have this previous resistance zone right here. If price really started to pull back, 4208.5 would be interested in that. And then go down to the daily, same thing. I'm going to be looking for Fibonacci retracements, pivot low, pivot high. You see price actually ended up breaking below that 61.8 on Friday, but it did reclaim it by the end of the day. So that area is still important to me. We do have nice confluence between weekly demand as well as that 61.8. If price breaks below this low right here at like 44.60, I would be looking for more downside, or 44.50 59, I would be looking for more downside on the ES futures. Now, after that, I mean, we have pivot low, pivot high there. So that would be a pretty hard pullback. And that's pretty much how I prepare for the coming week when it comes to SPY and QQQ, ES, and NQ. These are going to be my weekly levels. Those are the ones that I mainly want to pay attention to. And then as the week progresses, obviously, we're going to get different setups, but these are the higher time frames. These are the ones that we want to mainly pay attention to. So as always, if you guys did enjoy this bootcamp video, make sure to smash that like button as well as clicking that subscribe and that bell icon. It would mean the absolute world to me. Get notified every single time I upload a brand new video. And if you haven't already, make sure you do your daily check-in down in the comments. And make sure you guys tune in tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern time for the next bootcamp video. Everybody have an amazing rest of your Saturday evening, and I will see you guys in the next video.